welcome to Pharmaceutical Calculations with Dr. Dave. This video will be going over other common systems of measurement. So the video before this was looking at the SI units of measurements, which are very common in pharmacy, but there are some other ones that we encounter quite often in pharmacy that we need to address and be able to understand. So with those four, we have the Avoirdupois System, which is the one in which we typically see for weights and measurements. We have the Apothecary System, which is sort of an older system in pharmacy for weights and measures. We have household systems of weights and measures, which is those cups, teaspoons, tablespoons, that sort of thing. And then we also have temperature, which is something that I think all of us are aware of, the temperature in Fahrenheit. So let's look at that first one, the Avoirdupois System. So big name for something that you've probably seen all the time. You've seen pounds, you've probably seen ounces in your day-to-day activities, maybe not something that you've seen grains, but this is used typically in the US, and it's as a weight measurement, so when we're weighing stuff. Keep in mind that in these tables, I'm going to have the precise metric equivalent, and then I'm going to have something which is the pharmaceutical practical equivalent. And what that means is that that's something that you would typically see in pharmacy when we're doing the calculations, which is this answer over here, that practical pharmacy equivalent. The precise equivalent is something that you will see usually in manufactured products if you start seeing those numbers, but for the most time they are rounded to an approximate for use in pharmacy. So what do I mean by that? So if you see an ounce, if you see something that you're buying a product and it says 1 ounce, the packaging will typically say 28.35 grams. It might even say 30 grams. For a pound, you can see that at pharmacy, if you get a pound of cream, it's usually 454 grams. But the precise weight is 553.59 grams. The reason why I'm showing you this is that sometimes you will see people using precise, and sometimes in pharmacy, we typically use the pharmaceutical equivalent. So the numbers could be slightly different depending upon what estimate they're using, the precise one or the pharmaceutical practical equivalent. The last one is grains. This is in milligrams. There's a lot of drugs. This is a lot. There are a few exceptions to drugs that are usually seen on the label in milligrams or grams. For solid dosage forms, you will see sometimes grains. So there's some thyroid medications. There's another drug, phenobarbital. You will see dosed in grains. You need to know that 1 grain, that 1 grain is 65 milligrams. Very important. 1 grain, 65 milligrams, and you'll be all set. Know that a pound is 454 grams. You'll be all set. Know that 1 ounce in weight, 28.35. Not as important as the other two, but the other two are very important. So let's take an example. Patient weighs 165 pounds. You have to know what the kilogram is. Why? Because a lot of drugs are dosed in milligrams per kilogram or dose per kilogram. So how do we take the pounds and go to kilograms? Well, in our case, for what we are going to be doing, we are going to be looking at something which is very easy for us to do and utilizes some of the stuff we've learned. So the easy way to convert from pounds to kilograms is to take the number of pounds, which is 165 pounds, right? And you divide it by 2.2. If you take 165 and you divide that by 2.2, you will get 75, which is equal to number of kilograms. Now, where does this 2.2 come from, and why is this something you need to know very quickly when you're doing stuff? If you take, we have the fact that 1 pound, right? 1 pound is equal to 454 grams. Well, if I take 454 grams and I convert it to kilograms, it would be this. 1 pound is 454 kilograms. If I take the number 1 and I divide that by 0.454, I get approximately 2.2, you see. This is saying that 2.2 pounds is equal to 1 kilogram, right? So 2.2 pounds is equal to 1 kilogram. And that's why we get the conversion 2.2. So anytime you see pounds, you want to convert to kilograms divided by 2.2. Anytime you see kilograms and you want to convert to pounds, in this way, you multiply by 2.2. Right? So one thing you should be familiar with is 2.2 for kilograms and pounds. Very common between the weight of a patient going between the two. The next system that we're looking at is the apothecary system. It used to be that traditional system, like I said, of pharmacy when you saw prescription writing. It's used for volumes. We are typically going to see this for us in the way in which we look at volumes. Now, there were some old units that we barely see anymore at all, which were scruples. You'll see here scruples, and you'll see the drams. The drams is something that we do still use the terminology for prescription vials. When you see them in the pharmacy, you see drams. But it's not something that we use in really calculations or conversions in pharmacy anymore. But the ones below, you will see used very frequently. And we've discussed them previously, but now we're looking at them in a little more detail. For the fluid dram, right? And notice the way in which you write the fluid dram. Remember right here, right? You've only got one little loop on top, looks like a 3, right? That's one fluid dram. And then you also have the fluid ounce. The fluid ounce is another one on top of that, right? So the fluid dram. So fluid ounce and the fluid dram. What do we need to know about these? You should know that one fluid ounce is 30 mLs. You can use 29.57 if you like, but for us, 30 mLs. So if a prescription says to dispense 2 fluid ounces of a cough syrup, you would know to dispense 60 mLs, right? 2 fluid ounces, 2 times 30. One fluid dram is 3.69 mLs, right? Doesn't convert all that well, but we use, remember how we talked about in the signa of a prescription, we use that to designate 5 mLs when it's in the signa of a prescription. This is where we're pretty much going to be ever seeing that. I've seen it a handful of times in my career as a pharmacist, so not that often, but you will see it in the sigma. It means a teaspoon or 5 mLs. Then you have the pint, the quart, and the gallon over here. If you take into consideration that the pint is 16 fluid ounces, the quart is 32, and the gallon is 128, you can do your numbers excuse me, easily. But one of the ones which I think you should know off the top of your head is the 473. 473 mLs for 1 pint. Very important number. If you take 473, right, you multiply that times 2, you get your 946, which is the next one down, right? And again, for the 128, they get a gallon. But usually pint, quart, gallon in liquid amounts. This is the apothecary volumetric measurements. Should know what a fluid ounce is. You should know that when you see a fluid dram, not weight, it's a fluid dram, then we're typically looking at 5 mLs when it's in the signa. A pint, 473 mLs. For household units of measurements, it typically was used for cooking, as you see they're written. Right? They're not a very accurate method of measurement for the most part, so we usually have some conversion to a SI unit, but people will use them in common language, especially during patient counseling to a patient as to how much to take. What you should be familiar with is these 3 here, which is a repeat from the other one for one of them. You should know that a teaspoon is 5 mLs. You should know that a tablespoon is a teaspoon is 5 mLs, a tablespoon is 15 mLs. And you should know that a fluid ounce is 30 mLs. And we already talked about a fluid ounce being 30 mLs up here. But we also have it in our household units. So we use 30 mLs. So a fluid ounce, 30 mLs. A teaspoon is 5. A tablespoon is 15. When it's written down, you'll see the word teaspoonful or tablespoonful, no S. It's not teaspoonfuls, it's just teaspoonful. The cup, the pint, the quart, and the gallon. The cup and the pint, the cup not so much, but the pint being 16 fluid ounces is popular, and the gallon being 128 fluid ounces is important there for us to know. But for the most part, the first three you should know very fast and very rapidly. Last one is conversion to temperatures. We do know that conversion to temperature is used for some therapeutic indications, for purposes. We do monitor that in patients. We use it in compounding because we have to measure temperatures of things when they're melting or when they're going through transitions. Also for storage conditions, you'll see products that are in the pharmacy and they will have strict storage conditions. Knowing if it says to store something in a cool spot that's 46 to 59 degrees Fahrenheit, that's equivalent to 8 to about 15 degrees Celsius. Things like that are important to convert. So this is the conversion to temperature in Fahrenheit. I am not going to go over this. It's something you can look at yourself. Some of you may have already seen this in other courses that you've had in undergraduate. Keep in mind that for the Fahrenheit to Celsius one, if you want to go to Celsius, you do take the Fahrenheit temperature, you minus 32 times 5/9. You can do it the other way for Celsius to Fahrenheit. In this case, you take the temperature in Celsius, multiply it by 9/5, and then you add the 32 on that one. So you should know those as well to how to convert between them if ever needed. All right. So once again, that is the video on the common systems of measurement. And you should be able to memorize a lot of those common pharmaceutical practical equivalents. So the grain 65, the pound 454, particularly your fluid ounces being 30 mLs, your fluid dram being 5 mLs, your pint being 403 mLs, and your household units for teaspoon, tablespoon, right? The fluid ounce being the same. All right. So as always, pharmaceutical calculations, you should know it's the important class that you can have because it's the only one that counts.